lovely law enthusiast humans. We got some spicy, hot, steaming chai legal tea today. We're going to be talking about further Proctor problems. Albeit I'm a little bit behind, but don't worry, we're going to start a little further back for anyone who's new, blah, blah, blah. I will give a timestamp if you don't want the background, although it is important for stuff that's coming up. So in the 2024 time period, there was a trial of Karen Reed, who had been accused of hitting her boyfriend, Officer John O'Keefe, by backing into him with her SUV. Her original main defense was that it was a setup and a cover-up for what actually happened to him, involving a slew of other people, because she had dropped him off at another cop's house, Brian Albert, and being there were his son Colin, his friend Jen McCabe, and her daughter, and then also another officer slash detective of FBI related person, Brian Higgins, and his wife Nicole Albert. And John O'Keefe was over there for the first time, and somewhere between when she had dropped him off, Karen Reed, and in the morning after, something happened to John O'Keefe that caused his life to no longer exist. She, along with Jen McCabe and another friend, had found John O'Keefe on the Alberts' lawn, frozen and unresponsive. CPR was applied, and she and Karen Reed had tried to warm him up by lifting up her shirt and laying on top of him, and he was pronounced dead later that day. And Karen Reed is currently in civil lawsuits because her first trial hung, and her second trial she was acquitted. Now, what does this have to do with Proctor, the person who we brought up? Well, he was the lead investigator of the Karen Reed trial. And in the first set of trials, Proctor had a cell phone dump that had gone and actually taken from the feds and was allowed to be used in Karen Reed's trial. In the first trial, he read out some very horrendous text messages where he called her the C word. His text messages to civilians and other cops not involved in her trial, and to some of his superiors who were involved in the trial, like Sergeant Buchanan. That's important in a minute. And he also said that she should just off herself. Less than 24 hours into the investigation, he had texted that they're going to pin it on the girl, no way she skates, and just a slew of other things, also mentioning stuff like haven't found any nudes yet when looking through her phone. Him personally looking through her phone, not her cell phone data getting collected, him searching it himself. Not standard protocol. Now, she hung in the first trial, but after the first trial, Trooper Proctor became former Trooper Proctor. He was fired from his position pending an investigation following his testimony during her original trial. And not only was his text messages, there was a lot of things about his behavior that were revealed. Not only towards his accused bias towards Karen Reed from the beginning, but also things about another Albert, Detective Kevin Albert of the Boston, Massachusetts Police Department, telling Proctor in a text message, "Hey, do you know where my gun and badge are? I can't find them." He lost his police department issued weapon somewhere, and he was last with Trooper Proctor when they went out for drinks while on duty, and Proctor had been found to be drinking while operating his police department vehicle. And those were the reasons, the text messages showing bias and improper procedure, talking with civilians about cases, and him drinking on the job and operating a vehicle, the state vehicle on the job, were all the reasons that were noted by the police department of why he was let go. Now, he had made an interview. They were like, he said, my investigation wasn't compromised. Nothing I said was compromised. He said, yeah, I made some juvenile jokey text messages because calling someone a C word, making fun of their medical conditions, and telling them to go off themselves are clearly jokes that an investigator should be making to non-police personnel or even to police personnel, getting thumbs up by Sergeant Buchanan, his supervisor at the time. And he said that he wasn't compromised, that he had integrity in his investigation. It wasn't his fault that all the evidence pointed to Karen Reed. And he said that he didn't do anything wrong, that he didn't deserve to be disciplined, and he was making an appeal to get his job back because he didn't deserve to be fired, because at least, and this is very revealing about that particular police department in particular, that maybe that's just how they do. Like, this communication style isn't unusual for them, and that he felt like he was being used as the fall guy when other similar situations have happened and nobody else got disciplined. Now, just for the note, other people did get disciplined. Everyone who was involved in the Karen Reed trial and other people who had been in those text messages on the police department had gotten disciplined. All of them had been pushed down to a level, they had their stuff removed, or they lost vacation time. But further discipline has happened to all of them, and there has been a big investigation about it. Now, that is because of the text messages. He was telling people stuff. Your sergeant shouldn't be in your text threads where he knows there's civilians, and you talking about you shouldn't be doing work on your personal phone. Not that he should have said those things on his personal phone, but this is why we should keep personal and work separate. He has a work phone, but he was texting and saying stuff and doing operational stuff on his cell phone, which is why it got to get searched in the first place. And so he's having all of these horrible things that he's saying, and then he's like, I don't deserve this. Well, then, lo and behold, he had his first initial trial, and then his next trial was supposed to come up Monday, October 20th, 2025. But the Friday before, he drops the appeal entirely. There's multiple reasons for that. So former Trooper Proctor will further remain former Trooper Proctor because of the dropping of the appeal. Now, if he was so adamant for months about how he didn't deserve this and he didn't do anything wrong, there's nothing wrong with his investigation, which during the second Karen Reed trial, Sergeant Buchanan backed up, saying that everything Proctor did was with integrity and that nothing was compromised, and they didn't see anything wrong with the way the investigation was conducted. Things not being logged in, getting snow blown down with a leaf blower, collecting blood evidence in unsealed open red Solo cups borrowed from a neighbor, not isolating people who were involved. Well, that is because Friday, October 17th, the Friday before his hearing was supposed to take place, the entire Massachusetts Union, which is where Proctor had gotten his lawyer from, fully withdrew their support from him. Oh yeah, the whole thing, they were like, you know what, we think he was fully in the wrong. Yep, he's bad. We don't support that at all. They were supporting him a little bit before, but Friday, they were like, nope, we're done. He lost his lawyer who was connected to the union, as I mentioned. And so without a lawyer to back him up, without the union to support him, he didn't really have anywhere else to go. But something else happened that Friday that caused the support to be pulled, that caused his withdrawal to happen, because he could have just gotten another lawyer, right? It wouldn't have been a union lawyer, and maybe that would have caused him financial issues, or it definitely would have. But why the sudden pull from all directions? The data dump. Oh yes, my friends. Here is the tea of that. The former lawyer for Michael Proctor had said when they wanted to collect his phone again and do another data search, his lawyer, now I am summarizing, he used more legal and professional terms than this, but he essentially said, go ahead. Proctor got a new phone in February 2024, and it is set to totally delete and reset every 30 days. So you're not going to find anything, but go ahead, see what you got from the last week or so. Boy, did that bite him in the butt, though, because they found thousands of messages and data going all the way back to 2013. The Karen Reed case, which was the domino effect of this whole thing, was a case from 2022. There are other cases that have been trying to get other data from the federal investigation, but this data dump is brand new. It's from his personal phone from the state. And he has the King case and the Walsh case and several other cases that he has been connected to and involved in that are going to have ramifications. Because, again, there were a lot of people disciplined, a lot of people lost their jobs and lost their positions, including Michael Proctor himself, because of Michael Proctor's texts that were found and brought out during the Karen Reed initial trial. All these things happened because of a handful of text messages that had happened between Kevin Albert and Proctor, between Sergeant Buchanan and other officers and civilians in a text thread. So if they have data going all the way back to 2013, when some of these other cases are taking place, and it's also going to be affecting the Karen Reed civil trials, because the O'Keefe family is going through the process of suing Karen Reed civilly for wrongful death lawsuit after she was acquitted in her criminal trial. But Karen Reed is fighting back, and she is going after the McCabe's, the Alberts, and Trooper Proctor, and the Massachusetts Police Department as a whole, because she said, no, this was covered up. She was being thrown under the bus and trying to be used as a fall person, and it backfired on them. And she wants to bring all of them up in this. Now, why does this matter for Trooper Proctor's or former Trooper Proctor's data dump? Because if you didn't know, in the first Karen Reed trial, there was a lot of suspicious phone activity between the McCabe's and the Alberts. Allison McCabe, Brian Higgins, and Brian Albert all had gotten new phones. Like, they didn't keep any photos, they didn't keep any of their apps, they didn't keep anything. They got entirely new reset phones a week before they were going to be asked to turn their phones over for discovery. Now, how did they know when their phones were going to get pulled that they immediately needed to get new phones? He just didn't get a new phone. He also essentially wiped using an FBI base for his own personal use to erase his phone, and then dumped it in a military dumpster because that could not be searched by police or other investigators, because you're not allowed to go through military stuff. That's suspicious. If I had the audio clip. But yeah. So all of that happened. Now, why this matters? It's because even though they can't get that data from the Alberts, McCabe's, etc.'s phones, since there is data, text messages, and everything else pulled through 2013 on Proctor's phone, it seems like they went through an iCloud search via the phone. Any messages that he had to other people, like for instance, now I'm not saying these happens, this is speculation, I'm saying why this is important. We don't have the info available yet. But what I think might be happening is that if he has any text messages texting Kevin Albert, texting Brian Albert from that time, going like, hey, just giving you a heads up, your phones are going to be collected for discovery on this date, giving them the heads up, letting them know what's going on. if any of the McCabe's talked to Proctor, because Proctor and the Alberts have a very close connection. And Jen McCabe is Nicole Albert's sister, and they all get together very regularly for events and stuff. They're very interconnected. So the Alberts are high-standing family members. Chris Albert, one of the other Albert brothers, is on the city council. And so if Proctor is texting any of them information during the Karen Reed trial, well, now that's going to come out. Anything that he was talking about with the Kings, Walsh, and whatever else case, if he was talking to people during the Birchmore case, I will link below to everything for you to catch up on that stuff. That's going to come out. And Karen Reed will be able to use that because she wants all the data stuff too for her civil court. And it's already a hard civil case for her, but with Proctor's data dump being so massive, because his lawyer was just like, it resets and deletes every 30 days. There's nothing going on. And there's a whole big argument happening between the feds let the prosecutors have this. Now, here's something that's very weird and suspicious. The federal investigators turn stuff over that could be exculpatory, which means it could explain behavior for defendants. It could help free them from conviction. Like, say, yeah, they're not actually culpable for this in some way, shape, or form from his phones. But the feds were like, you can only have this for a short amount of time to the prosecutors, but said that they couldn't turn over any digital or hard copies to the defense. The defense is like, legally, if they have information, they have to turn it over to us, especially if it's exculpatory. And the prosecutors are like, we're not allowed. We have it, we can show you it, but we can't give you any hard copies, which means if they don't have any hard or digital copies, the defense attorneys can't use it as evidence. They can't say, we saw evidence of this that the prosecutors gave us, but we weren't allowed to have it. You can't present that to the jury. They have to be able to have copies of it to be able to make them into exhibits to bring in. And so they're like, we have a legal right, a constitutional protection of our client to have that information. But the feds are like, yeah, but we don't want to let you have that, and we have the right to keep that from you. So now there's a further legal battle of protecting the defendants and possibly innocent people for getting charged for things they really didn't do, and the evidence that would prove that being kept from them, which is illegal. But the feds don't have to turn information over, which is crazy to me that they can find evidence and that somehow they're allowed to just be like, yeah, we know this could make or break your case, but we're just going to keep that to ourselves. That's also crazy to me. What the peaches? And so now the prosecutors have been allowed to look through, and the prosecutors are allowed to decide what's exculpatory and what's not, because they're allowed to make some snippets of things that they think could be helpful to the defendant, but they get to pick that out. The prosecutors are the opposition. I think the defense attorneys should be able to look through and have all the data and then be able to present it to the court, to the judge, to decide what is exculpatory and what's just fluff. But everyone's stuck between a rock and a hard place because everyone has legal standing. It's just different between the state and federal levels. And the judge doesn't know what to do. The prosecutors don't know what to do. The defense knows what they want to do, but don't have the legal standing to demand it from the feds. And so it just has become insane. But as we get to decide what's going to happen with the evidence that has been shown. Now, the great news is all the new data dump isn't from the feds. That's from the state. So all that's going to come out. But there was stuff from the federal investigation that has additional information from, plausibly, it has been suggested, from Proctor's work phone too. And that is what the arguments are. So, new data dump with whole bunches of stuff. Proctor's going to remain a former trooper. He's just going to have to find another line of work. and the legal battles continue. The Massachusetts Norfolk County Police Departments, they got a lot to deal with, and that is where we are with that. Thank you so much for listening to me go off on another Proctor Karen Reed tangential case. I will give you more information as we get it, because right now they're at a standstill and we just have to find out what's going to happen next, and I will let you know when we get there. I hope that you are all having a happy beginning of your November. I look forward to talking about more enthusiastic cases with you. And just in case anybody doesn't know, I'm also a fellow law enthusiast. I'm not a lawyer myself or other legally adjacent professional, just an enthusiast. All links will be below. And if you like this kind of coverage, if you like my summary style of doing things, then you can join me further by liking and subscribing, hitting that cute little bell that now is just an outline. It's not a solid bell anymore, to get all of the updates. Bye, my lovely humans.